Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. A lot of buzz around this Florida State Seminoles team relating to the transfer portal. Most importantly, DJU taking a visit to Tallahassee later this week. And I think a lot of fans there's two sides of this. I think some fans are fired up about the potential that DJU has in this Florida State offense. And there's a lot of Florida State fans that remember the days at Clemson, remember the inconsistencies that DJU had and say, thanks, but no thanks. Kind of want to break down DJU. We'll reference Cam Ward a little bit, then talk about some other transfer portal targets for the Florida State Seminoles. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys and a special shout out to the Florida State fans. That fan base, you guys have shown just a ton of support to the boys. It's no secret. We love talking about what Mike Norvell and this Florida State team is doing, where they're going, and the amount of support y'all show. It really does mean a lot. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, would love to hear your guys' takes on DJU potentially being the quarterback in 2024 for the Noles. Dill, you are probably a little bit more of a fan of DJU than I am, so I'm going to give you the floor here and pitch us on DJU winding up in Tallahassee.
I think that people who point to his completion percentage, and that's not a great completion percentage. Everyone knows, you really should be above 60% if you're, kind of going to call yourself confident college quarterback play. But I think if you watch what they did at Oregon State, it wasn't such a traditional college football offense where a lot of the balls were going lateral. It was a lot of short RPO, one read, kind of cut it loose to a quick slant or something. It was a lot of play action, trying to get the ball deep and run guys to the corners off of play. Those throws are not easy throws. And you look at the jump that Oregon State team made from the year they had really no quarterback to the years they had DJU. It was massive. He really added a new dynamic. And yes, it started and stopped with the run game for them. But the way they were able to push the ball down the field off of that run, I think DJU unlocked that, and it made that offense really, really good.
That's probably the best selling point for DJU and for Florida State fans is you take a look at the offense from 2022 without DJ, and then when DJ got into the offense in 2023. I don't think a lot of people know this because you're out in Corvallis, Oregon State, not a ton of national media attention. Still, this Oregon State offense was top 20 in the country in points per game. It was a very good offense, and I think that's as good as you've seen DJU play. And again, on paper, the 57% completion percentage is not necessarily great. But like you said, when you watch the Oregon State games, and we've watched plenty of Oregon State this year, I mean, it was a lot of aggressive. It kind of putting a lot on DJ's plate in terms of pushing the ball downfield, throwing it to the boundary. It was they were kind of asking him to make some NFL level throws.
They weren't giving him as many easy swings and stuff that, again, I think pads a lot of college quarterback stats.
Yeah.
So a guy you talk about, Grayson McCall,
guy,
a big completion percentage, but that's not as hard of an offense. They don't ask him to make as many big time NFL throws, if you will, as what DJU was asked to do in Corvallis. So I think when you compare them, there are still the accuracy issues for sure. And there are throws he misses that you just can't miss. And I'm not arguing that, but I do think that if you're just going to look at that completion percentage, it doesn't tell the whole story because he was asked to do a lot at Oregon.
Yeah, I do think I agree with that. And yes, there are those throws that make you scratch your head a little bit. But what DJU brings to the offense that, again, is more than just the numbers. A 57 completion percentage for 2,600 yards, 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, is what he brings to the offense in terms of what you can do. Back to a guy like Grayson McCall, who I really do think would be a great fit in Tallahassee, but that's a discussion for another day. He opens up the offense to the fullest extent. If you have Grayson McCall as your quarterback, yes, a little bit more consistent, probably a little bit more of an accurate passer, especially in that short and intermediate route trees. There's certain things you just can't do with Grayson McCall because he doesn't have the arm to do it. DJU allows you to kind of call a full offense because there's not a throw on the football field that he can't make. And so another thing to kind of add is, this Florida State staff has done a really good job. You look at Jordan Travis and his development. It's been really, really impressive over the last couple of years. If you can do that with DJ, there was a reason he was a top 5 national prospect coming out of high school, a 5-star quarterback, because he does have special arm talent. And if they can get the most out of him, it would be really fun to watch him in this offense. And
I think Jonathan Smith did a good job in terms of moving the ball forward on DJU because I thought he played a lot more. He was a lot more composed. I thought, again, you kind of look at Clemson. The offense is still, as much as we like to beat quarterbacks at Clemson, the scheme it feels like it's broken. I mean, they play a little scared. They don't like to push the ball down the field. They don't ask their quarterbacks to do much. And you notice it just feels like timid play out of that position for two quarterbacks now. So again, people like to get, if you're only thinking about Clemson, I think you're doing a disservice to yourself in terms of evaluating what DJU can be.
It seemed more of a Clemson problem than a DJU problem after what we just saw from Clemson in 2023. Another thing to talk about, it's a little bit of a different dimension in terms of the run game, but DJU is a hammer running the football, and he desires to run the football. He is bigger than most linebackers trying to tackle him. He's not as shifty. He's not as elusive as Jordan Travis, but that dude is a battering ram. And when it gets into the red zone and you want to have it, he brings it, especially in the red zone. When it is so important to score touchdowns and not settle for field goals, having a guy that's run for 21 touchdowns as well for over 1,200 yards, that also provides some juice to the offense. All right, Dill, we sold him on DJU. Now let's go to Cam Ward, who personally is my guy in this transfer portal cycle. I think he's a lot of fans and a lot of programs guy in the transfer portal cycle. I know you're a fan of him too. I will give you a chance to sell Cam Ward as well, who I guess we should preface is in Miami right now, and there's a lot of buzz that he could wind finding himself at Tallahassee at some point this week as well.
Yeah, and honestly, you're looking at two very much NFL arms. I mean, big, can make all the throws. Like those things you kind of want to see again if you're going to run an offense that can be really explosive. I think you kind of have a different style. I mean, a guy who likes to get the ball out quickly and operate in that way. And that is kind of what Florida State liked to do at times. I know they took their shots, but they weren't necessarily trying to hold the ball a ton, especially with the way their offensive line was playing. But I think, again, you're looking at two guys, in my opinion, in just Cam Ward especially. If you coach them really well, I think they can both.
That's probably my biggest selling point. And right now, if you ask me, I could start 2024 season, Cam Ward, DJU, I'm taking Cam Ward. I mean, he's just been a little bit more consistent the last 2 years. 65% completion percentage, 48 touchdowns, only 16 interceptions. But I think the selling point for both of these guys is the upside is a lot higher than some other guys. Like their upside's high, and I am the biggest Dillon Gabriel fan that there is. The upside for DJU and Cam Ward in terms of what they can bring to an offense, it's higher. You've seen a little bit more consistent play from Dillon Gabriel for a longer time. Probably lump Grayson McCall into that as well. But the upside of what DJU or Cam Ward can bring you, I think is much higher. So if you're Florida State and you're looking at this quarterback room, and I'm not going to rule out guys like Brock Lennon taking that step as well in 2024. I know a lot of people have that stance as well. But Cam Ward, DJU, truly special arms that I do think, given the right scheme and circumstance, can provide a ton of value to an offense. We had a discussion about quarterbacks. Unfortunately, Florida State fans know as much as anyone else, there's more to a football team than just your quarterback. And I wish the rest of it's time for that is a discussion for another time. But let's talk about some different positions. And I'll go kick it to you here because you're a big fan of this kid. Carter Smith was on campus in Tallahassee this weekend, coming from Indiana, 12-game starter at the tackle spot in the Big Ten. Carter Smith, what do you got for him?
You know what a big thing I think of if you're going to bring a DJU in? I think you need to revamp this offensive line. You need to be able to run the football because I'm looking – Cam Ward, if you're not going to run the ball particularly well, is probably the better fit because, again, he's just more accurate from all points of the field. But with DJU, if you can run the football, I think he's proven he can be a very effective quarterback. He's very good on the run. So if DJU is going to be the guy, they probably got to bring in 2 to 3 really good offensive linemen so they can run it and be a little bit more effective than they were last year.
And that was the position group that we always said was just not quite there. Like you look at every aspect of this Florida State team, it was national championship caliber. That whole defense, absolutely. Jordan Travis, the wide receivers, that stuff, running backs, Trey Benson, national championship caliber. The offensive line wasn't quite there. Has it gotten better over the last couple of years? 100%. But it wasn't in that upper echelon of college football. So I'm with you. You want to revamp this offensive line, especially with a guy like DJU who is probably at his best working the play action. You can get this run game going. And Carter Smith, I mean, extremely good at the Big Ten level. And again, you're facing defensive lines like Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, 438 pass blocking attempts, only gave up 19 pressures. Pretty damn good numbers. And it's hard to find starting caliber tackles in the transfer portal because everyone wants him. Sounds like Florida State has the inside track on a kid in Carter Smith, who, again, still young, some room to develop, but certainly could be a plug-and-play tackle at Florida State. Next position I want to go to, Dylan, another guy that you have a lot of experience with, Kyle Canard, coming from Georgia Tech. Looking at the defensive line, you don't really know what's going on with Patrick Payton. I think there's some growing optimism that might work itself out. But Jared Verse gone. You're kind of losing that guy on the defensive line, especially in terms of pass rush. Kyle Canard from Georgia Tech. How are we feeling about him?
I mean, what I think kind of, again, not to say he's going to be Jared Verse, but kind of does a similar, like, very tough against the run and also like can rush the passer. So I think adding a little more versatility to it, again, you saw how effective Jared Verse was. You line him up wherever he was on the D line, very productive and obviously a huge factor in the run. I think Kyle Canard probably adds a little bit more of that than, say, a Patrick Payton does. He is a little more universal set of skills on that D line.
Could not agree more with him against the run. Like, and it was so frustrating is like people love to like knock Jared Verse in terms of the sack production just wasn't there in 2023. I can already see myself getting frustrated doing the NFL draft stuff. And like Jared Verse was such a hammer against the run. Kyle Canard is like that. And again, I'm not saying Kyle Canard is going to be Jared Verse, who I think should be a top 15 pick in the NFL draft, but he's very good against the run.
He's very good down the end. You can any situation he's going to be effective,
and he's very good going speed to power. Like he actually does resemble Jared Verse in a lot of different ways in terms of how they play. He's just probably not there, but you're looking to replace a Jared Verse-esque player. I mean, they brought him in on campus. It sounds like they're in a good spot to land him. He's a veteran guy. This one would make a ton of sense for Florida State. The last one I want to talk about, and God, this is lining these guys up for you, Dill, that you were big fans of. Fidel Diggs from Texas A&M hits the transfer portal. Part of that Texas A&M defensive class that is dominant. Fidel Diggs, another guy that can get it done on the edge.
Another big, heavy-handed defensive lineman or defensive end, I should say, who, likes to play physical. And it's not like that prolific pass rush. I don't think he's got that, like, flexibility at Ben that, like, is that first-round caliber player, but really effective against the run and does a good job creating havoc. You looked at what A&M did last year. It wasn't so much guys winning off the edge. They just
pockets.
They were collapsing pockets and just being super disruptive. And that's honestly, in a lot of ways, just as important, especially if you can be athletic and chase quarterbacks down lately, like their linebackers have shown they've been able to do.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the numbers, 14 run stops, 11 tackles for loss. The number that I love looking at for defensive linemen, average depth of tackle. Like, are you making your plays around the line of scrimmage? 2 yards average depth of tackle. Like, this guy's winning at the point of attack. He's holding edges. Another one of those guys that might not stuff the stat sheet in terms of sacks, but you're going to get really good football play out of him. And again, that's Mike Norvell. That's what he wants. And so you're looking at replacing the edge. Kyle Canard, Fidel Diggs. Fidel Diggs got an in-home visit from Adam Fuller. So you're feeling decently about the spot Florida State's in for Fidel Diggs, Kyle Canard. Those are our takes. Most importantly, and the biggest storyline here is the quarterback position. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Me and Dill have been going back and forth for a couple hours about this one. Would love to hear from you guys. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys again. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.